Did you know that over 90% of Spanish verbs are regular? This means with just one set of rules, you can say thousands of words in Spanish. Stick around to learn this essential concept for any beginner Spanish student. Welcome to Spanglish Friends, the podcast for true beginner Spanish learners.
Hola amigos, I'm Val, your co-host and experienced Spanish teacher from Venezuela.
And I'm Em, your Australian co-host who's been learning Spanish for 10 years.
Our goal is simple, to get you confident listening and speaking in beginner Spanish with content you'll actually use in real-life conversations.
Join the Spanish Friends community by subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts and following us on social media at Spanglish_Friends. Let's get started.
Comencemos.
Amigos, hola, hola, buenos días, bienvenidos de nuevo.
Buenos dias, welcome back Spanglish Friends.
This is episode 18, episodio 18, and today we are diving into something essential for beginner Spanish learners, how to use regular verbs in the present tense.
That's right. Now remember Spanglish Friends, verbs are our doing words like to speak or to run or to live. And just like in English, Spanish uses verbs to describe actions. Okay, and here's the really exciting part. Most of these verbs, these action words, these doing words, follow predictable patterns. You'll literally be able to say hundreds of new sentences after you finish listening to today's episodes. How exciting!
Which is why this episode is going to be such a game changer. Imagine, Spanglish Friends, imagine yourself after listening to this episode being able to say things like, I dance every week, or I run every day. By the end of today's episode, you'll be able to answer 3 really important questions.
Yes, and they are, número uno, what is the present tense and when do we use it in Spanish? Número dos, what are the 3 types of regular verbs, those action words, those doing words in Spanish? And número tres, how do we conjugate those verbs with common pronouns like yo, which means I, tú, which means you, and él and ella, which means he or she?
Maravilloso. Let's bring those questions to life with a short conversation in Spanish. Una conversación pequeña. We will break it down at the end, but for now, Spanglish Friends, just listen and trying to catch any familiar words.
That's right. Are you ready, Profe Val?
Claro que sí, amiga. Comencemos. Hola, Em. ¿Qué haces hoy?
Buenos días, Val. Hoy yo trabajo y después yo como y bebo un café. ¿Y tú?
Hoy yo no trabajo. Yo escribo un poco y después camino al parque.
¡Qué bien!
Can you believe it, Spanglish Friends? In just 10 minutes, you'll be able to understand that conversation fully. Let's break it down by tackling our first question of the day. What is the present tense and when do we use it in Spanish?
The present tense is what we use when we talk about actions happening now or habits. Just like in English when we say things like I speak, you live, or we dance. All of this is being said in the present tense.
It's also used for things that are always true, like a fact. For example, yo hablo español. I speak Spanish.
That's right. It's always true. So you're using that present tense. And it's also great for talking about routines. For example, yo canto cada lunes, which means I sing. Canto is from the verb cantar. I sing, yo canto cada lunes, which means every Monday. The present tense helps you to describe what's going on in your regular daily life.
Exactamente. Which brings us to your second key question. What are the 3 types of regular verbs in Spanish? And can you tell us?
Yes, absolutely. So, unlike English, okay, where verbs can end in all different kinds of ways. So, let's take the verb, for example, to sing, which ends in a G, or to talk, which ends with a K, or to live, which ends in an E, okay? In Spanish, every single verb, every single action word ends in one of only 3 ways, okay? They are the letters AR, ER, or IR, okay? AR, ER, or IR verbs. And those endings tell us how we need to conjugate the verb.
Exactamente. AR would sound in Spanish ar. ER would sound in Spanish er, and AR would sound ir. Let's give some examples. Common ar verbs include, for example, hablar, hablar, to speak, trabajar, to work, and caminar, to walk. AR ending verbs are the most common. About 75% of regular verbs in Spanish end in AR, in ar.
That's right. And then we have the ER verbs, the verbs, and some examples include things like comer, which means to eat, beber, which means to drink, and aprender, which means to learn. And this comprises about 15% of regular verbs, our verbs ending in ER.
And finally, we have ir verbs, IR, like vivir, to live, escribir, to write, and abrir, to open. This make up the remaining 10% of verbs.
That's right. The big idea behind this Spanglish Friends is that all regular verbs in Spanish follow one of these 3 patterns with the AR, ER, or IR structure. And if you know how to conjugate them, which we're about to teach you, you can unlock thousands of useful sentences which you can start using and saying as a beginner.
Which leads perfectly into our third and final question. How do we conjugate verbs in the present tense in Spanish using pronouns like yo, tú, él, and ella?
Let's walk through it with the verb hablar to start with. Hablar, Hablar, means to speak. Okay, step number 1 in conjugating a verb in Spanish. Firstly, we need to remove the end of the verb. Okay, in this case, it's AR. Okay, we need to remove the AR to get the stem of the verb. In this case, the stem is HABL, ab. Okay,
Awesome. Now we add the ending that matches the pronoun. For yo, which means I, we add O. The O replaces the AR after you remove it. So it becomes yo hablo. I speak. Yo hablo.
That's right. HABLO. It no longer has the AR at the end. It just has O. Okay, so to say I speak Spanish, for example, I would say yo hablo español. I speak Spanish. What other examples do we have, Profe Val, of how to use the pronoun I with the correct conjugations?
You add an O to all verbs when you're talking about yourself. For example, the verb estudiar is an ar verb. Conjugated with yo would be yo estudio, I study. Comer is an verb since it ends in er. And conjugated with yo would be yo como. Again, you take off, you remove the er and you add an O instead, and that's how you conjugate yo como, I eat. And finally, you have verbs ending in ir, like vivir. Again, you remove the IR and you add an O instead. And then you have yo vivo, I live.
That's right. I'm seeing that pattern. So in summary, Spanglish Friends, for yo, which means I, we chop off the ending, the AR, the ER, or the IR, and we just replace it with O. That is so easy. Now, what about the pronoun tu, Val, which means you?
For tu, it depends on the verb type with AR verbs. Ar. With AR verbs, we add the letters AS to the stem. For example, caminar, to walk, becomes with the pronoun tú, caminas. Tú caminas. You walk. Hablar becomes tú hablas. You speak. Can you see how we remove AR and we add an as instead? So that's how it turns. Tú hablas and tú caminas.
That's right. So bringing this to life, if I want to ask someone, do you speak English? I would say, tú hablas, which means, do you speak inglés, which means English. So ¿Tú hablas inglés? Means, do you speak English?
Perfecto. Now with ER and IR verbs, R and ER, it's a little different. For both, we add the letters ES instead of AS, okay, with the pronoun tú. Here we are talking about just the pronoun tú.
That's right. So, for example, the verb comer, which means to eat, which is an ER verb, becomes conjugated tú comes. Tú comes. Okay, we've dropped the ER, we've added on the ES to make tú comes. And an IR verb example, an IR verb example, vivir, to live, becomes tú vives. Tú vives, which means you live.
Exactly. Now, amigos, for él and ella, he and she, the endings are the letter A. It's going to replace AR verbs. And the letter E, the letter E, it's going to replace the ER and the IR verbs.
That's right. So let's bring it to life with examples. For example, she dances. How do I say she dances? We use the pronoun for she, ella, okay? And we need the verb bailar, which is an AR verb, which means to dance. We drop the AR and we just add an A. So it becomes ella baila, which means she dances. Let's do another example. He eats is él come. Okay, the verb is comer. We drop the ER and we just add the E because it's an ER verb. Él come. Another example. If I wanted to say she lives in Chile, okay, she lives in Chile, I would say vive from the verb vivir, which is an IR verb. We're replacing the IR with just an E. Ella vive en Chile.
Maravilloso. Let's recap all the conjugations we have learned today. With the pronoun yo, I, you add an O instead of an AR. So verbs like hablar would become yo hablo. With the verb comer, it becomes yo como. And with the verb vivir, it becomes yo vivo. With pronoun tú, add either an AS for verbs ending in AR, in AR. For example, hablar, tú hablas. And an ES for and ir verbs, okay? Those that are ending in ER and IR. For example, comer, it becomes tú comes. And vivir, it becomes tú vives. Last one, el, ella, add an A for verbs ending in AR verbs. Okay, you remove the AR and you add an A. Example, with bailar, to dance, ella baila. And for verbs ending ER and IR, you add an E instead, an E. For example, comer, él come, and vivir, ella vive.
Amazing, Spanglish friends. This is so incredible that you've learned how to conjugate regular verbs in the present tense. Now, do not worry if this is a lot and your brain is imploding, okay? I certainly felt this way when I started learning Spanish. If you are a visual learner like myself, head to our Instagram page because we're going to be posting a helpful visual chart to show you all of these verb endings clearly.
Woohoo! We did it. Maravilloso. And now it's time for our listener shout out of the week. We want to give a huge shout out to our friend Migley Mouse, which is likely not your real name. Apologies for that. Who commented on our Insta Reels this week.
Yes, and this comment really made both Val and I's days, okay?
Absolutely.
They said they were so happy that they found our podcast, and this is, I quote, verbatim written from them. I'm enjoying how you guys are an actual beginner's Spanish podcast. At least the first one I've found. All the other ones go straight into speaking solid Spanish right away. Our mission is done, Val.
Wow. This has been amazing feedback. Thank you so much.
It's so exciting to hear. So let's finish off today by replaying our conversación pequeña so you can now fully bring to life everything we've taught you today, Spanglish friends, in a listening exercise.
Listen closely and try to hear those new verbs ending in ar, in and in ir this time around.
Let's do it. Are you ready again, Profe Val?
Sí. Comencemos. Hola, Em. ¿Qué haces hoy?
Buenos días, Val. Hoy yo trabajo y después yo como y bebo un café. ¿Y tú?
Hoy yo no trabajo. Yo escribo un poco y después camino al parque.
¡Qué bien!
Let's break down today's conversation. Amigos, first I asked Em, ¿qué haces hoy? What are you doing today?
That's right. So you got the verb hacer, you chopped off the ER and you replaced it with the correct ending for tú, which is ES. Love it. ¿Qué haces hoy? What are you doing today? And I said what I'm doing. I responded to say, yo trabajo, yo como, y yo bebo. Now, these were all regular verbs that I conjugated ending in O because I'm talking about myself. I said, I'm working, I work. I eat, yo como, from the verb comer. And I said, yo bebo, which comes from the verb beber, to drink.
Then I replied with, yo no trabajo, I don't work. Trabajo comes from the verb trabajar, which means to work. Then I said, yo escribo, I write. Escribo comes from the verb escribir, which means to write. And finally I said, and I walk. Yo camino, which comes from the verb caminar. And I said, yo camino.
That's right. And I ended with que bien, which means how nice that we've spoken about what we're doing today. There are a lot of action verbs in just a few lines that you've learnt, Spanglish friends. Can you believe that you could literally make thousands of sentences out of this now? Let's wrap things up, Profe Val, with our 3 key takeaways from today's episode.
Absolutely. We want you to remember the 3 learning from today's episode, amigos. Número 1. The present tense is used for things happening now, things you do regularly, your routine, or facts, okay? Número 2. Regular verbs in Spanish, they have a pattern, and the pattern is they can either end in AR, AR, in ER, ER, or IR, IR. And last one, número 3. To conjugate these verbs, learn the correct endings. For yo, you add an O to all of the verbs, to verbs ending in ar, or ir. For the pronoun tú, add either as, as, for our verbs, or an es, es, for and ir verbs. And last one, el, ella. You can add either a or e for and ir verbs.
Woohoo! And now, Spanglish friends, it's time for our challenge of the week, our reto of the week, to help you put the concepts we've learnt today into practice and cement them in your mind.
We want you to answer this question. ¿Qué haces hoy? What are you doing today? ¿Qué haces hoy?
That's right. And to answer this question, we want you to use the structure yo, the pronoun I, plus a regular verb with the correct conjugation. For example, yo hablo inglés. I speak English. Or yo trabajo en casa. I work from home.
Drop your answers in the comments. We can't wait to read them.
Yes. And guess what? Spoiler alert. Next week, friends, we're diving into how to say the seasons of the year in Spanish, like autumn, summer, winter, spring, and what are your favorite things?
Estoy emocionada. But right now, yo como, I eat, and then yo duermo. I have to sleep. I sleep.
Well, I have to work. Yo trabajo.
Ok, amigos, muchísimas gracias. Hasta pronto. Chao, chao.
Hasta la próxima, Spanglish friends. Ciao.
Thank you for listening to Spanglish Friends. We are both so proud of the time you're investing to level up your Spanish listening and speaking skills.
If you've enjoyed today's episode, follow us and give the show a rating wherever you listen to podcasts. Or even better, tell a friend about the show. It's how we can help even more people on their Spanish learning journeys and continue to grow our awesome, supportive community.
Don't forget to check out our socials, including Instagram and TikTok at Spanglish_friends for even more beginner Spanish fun.
Congratulations on taking another step today towards your Spanish learning goals. Ciao, Spanglish amigos. Until next time.
Hasta la próxima, amigos.